When the biggest action star of the 1980s suddenly vanishes from every screen, every magazine, every spotlight that once followed his every move, people notice. And when that star is Mr. T, the man with the mohawk, the gold chains, the voice that made "I Pity the Fool" a cultural phenomenon, the silence becomes deafening. One day he's everywhere, pulling down $5 million a year, standing in the White House with Nancy Reagan. The next, he's just gone. No explanations, no farewell tours, just emptiness where a legend used to stand. Hollywood will tell you it was cancer. They'll say he faded naturally. But here's the dark truth they don't want you to know about why Mr. T really disappeared. The bottom. To understand how Hollywood destroyed Mr. T, you need to see where he started. Because that beginning shaped every decision that would later get him labeled difficult, troublesome, and eventually erased. Lawrence Terode entered the world in 1947 in Chicago's South Side, crammed into an apartment with 11 siblings and a single mother, breaking her body in manual labor. His father, a minister who should have been the family's foundation, walked out when Lawrence was 5, just vanished, leaving his mother to raise 12 children alone through work that destroyed her joints and her spirit. The neighborhood was a war zone of poverty and racial hatred. Young Lawrence watched black men who'd fought for America overseas get called boy by people who'd never seen combat. That word, dripping with disrespect, burned itself into his mind. He made himself a promise that would define everything. The moment he turned 18, the day he legally became a man who could vote and be held accountable, he changed his name. Not to something flashy or Hollywood-ready. He chose Mr. T. 2 letters and a period, because every time someone addressed him, they had to say Mr. They had to acknowledge his humanity. That wasn't marketing. That was survival. High school showed flashes of his potential. Wrestling championships, football dominance, martial arts mastery. A scholarship opened college doors, but his rebellious nature slammed them shut just as fast. Expelled freshman year. Most people would have collapsed right there. Lawrence didn't blink. He joined the Army in 1975, became a military policeman, learned discipline that would later save his life. When he tried out for the Green Bay Packers chasing that NFL dream, a knee injury crushed it before training camp ended. So, he landed where many broken dreams go, working as a bouncer in Chicago's most violent clubs. But this wasn't just a job. This was where Mr. T was born, standing 5'10" with military training and rage that had been building since childhood. He became a legend. Over 200 fights across those club floors, not a single loss. Troublemakers took one look at him and reconsidered their entire evening. Those gold chains everyone remembers, they started here. Jewelry dropped during brawls, left behind, forgotten. He wore them so customers could reclaim their property, but also because they made him look dangerous, untouchable, like some kind of warrior from another century. He studied Mandinka warriors from West Africa, crafted that iconic mohawk to honor their spirit. Every piece of his image carried meaning, carried power. Then came 1980 and America's Toughest Bouncer competition. Before the final boxing match, he stared into the camera and delivered the line that would change everything. "I just pity the guy who has to fight me." 54 seconds later, his opponent was unconscious. And watching at home, nursing ideas for his next film, was Sylvester Stallone. The Rocket. Stallone was building Rocky III and needed an opponent who could make audiences believe Rocky Balboa might actually lose. When he saw Mr. T demolish that bouncer on television, saw that raw intensity burning through the screen, he knew he'd found his villain. What started as a minor role exploded into something much bigger. Mr. T's authentic street toughness forced Stallone to expand the character of Clubber Lang. This wasn't acting. This was barely controlled fury. Rocky III dropped in 1982 and crushed the box office. Overnight, a Chicago bouncer became a rising action star. "I Pity the Fool" echoed across playgrounds and offices everywhere. He'd gone from protecting celebrities to becoming one, but nothing prepared anyone for what came next. The A-Team hit television in 1983, and Mr. T didn't just become famous, he became inevitable. As B.A. Baracus, the mohawked mechanic who could fix anything but couldn't handle flying, he captured something lightning. The character mixed muscle with vulnerability, rage with humor, toughness with genuine heart. Kids wanted to be him. Adults respected him. He was earning $80,000 per week. That's over $5 million annually, when most Americans were making $30,000 a year. The money was obscene. The fame was suffocating in the best possible way. His face appeared everywhere. Movie posters, magazine covers, lunchboxes, action figures. He had his own animated series where he led young gymnasts fighting crime. Parents fed their children Mr. T cereal for breakfast. He released a rap album teaching kids to respect their parents and avoid drugs. He made a life skills video that an entire generation watched in schools. He even stood in the White House beside First Lady Nancy Reagan, a street kid from Chicago's worst neighborhoods, now photographed with American royalty. The transformation seemed complete, permanent, unstoppable. But in Hollywood, nothing stays permanent. And the higher you climb, the more people start sharpening their knives. The cracks. The A-Team ended in 1987 after 5 seasons, and the slowdown started immediately. Not dramatically, not with some explosive finale, just a gradual cooling that Mr. T could feel but couldn't stop. He tried another series, T playing a reformed ex-convict solving crimes. It lasted 3 seasons but never captured that lightning-in-a-bottle magic. Meanwhile, the action genre was evolving fast. Schwarzenegger's Terminator and Stallone's Rambo represented a new breed of hero, more complex, more vulnerable beneath the muscles. The one-dimensional tough guy was becoming outdated, and Mr. T's image was locked in stone. Every role offered was either a parody of himself or another street thug. Hollywood had put him in a box and welded it shut. Producers couldn't see past the mohawk and muscles. They didn't want Mr. T playing different characters. They wanted Mr. T playing Mr. T again and again. For an artist wanting to show range, wanting to prove he could do more, that was suffocating. But refusing roles meant losing work. Accepting them made the box smaller. His physical dominance was fading too. Years of intensity, of being on all the time, had taken their toll. By the late 80s, he was doing wrestling exhibitions, but couldn't maintain that fearsome presence anymore. Then came the scandal that damaged his carefully constructed righteous image. In 1987, he cut down over 100 oak trees on his Lake Forest estate, just to get a better view. The media called it the Chainsaw Massacre. Environmental groups erupted. The hero who preached respect and responsibility had destroyed a community's natural beauty for personal vanity. The tarnish spread fast. The wrestling world treated him even worse than Hollywood did. When he appeared at WrestleMania in 1985 and 86, teaming with Hulk Hogan and facing Roddy Piper, the professional wrestling community revolted. They saw him as an outsider, an actor playing in their world without earning his place through years of blood and broken insurance. Roddy Piper said it publicly. The whole wrestling world doesn't like him. He's just an actor. The exhibition matches carried real tension. One wrong move could have turned scripted entertainment into a legitimate brawl. He was never accepted. His wrestling career ended quickly and bitterly. By the early 90s, Mr. T had nearly vanished. Small guest roles, commercials, minor appearances at events nobody cared about. The spotlight that once followed him everywhere had moved to fresher faces, newer voices. People assumed he'd simply faded like most stars do, relevant for a moment, then forgotten. They had no idea what was really coming. The diagnosis. In 1995, at just 43 years old, Mr. T received news that made every fight he'd ever won meaningless. The diagnosis? Cutaneous T-cell lymphoma, cancer. And in a cosmic joke so cruel it seemed personal, the disease carried his name. He later said, "Can you believe it? Cancer with my name on it. Like it was born just to take me down." The battle that followed makes every action scene he ever filmed look like child's play. Chemotherapy ravaged his body with brutality no opponent in the ring ever matched. He vomited so constantly that he kept buckets throughout his home. When buckets weren't enough, he used towels. His body, once a symbol of invincible strength, betrayed him cell by cell. The treatment was hell, pure unfiltered suffering. But he survived it, fought through it, thought he had beaten it. Less than a year later, the cancer roared back even more aggressively. Tumors erupted across his skin. His own words describing the horror, like popcorn in a microwave. Watching his body turn against itself, becoming something he didn't recognize. For 6 years, from 1995 to 2001, Lawrence Turode fought just to stay alive. His career naturally collapsed. from $5 million a year to scraping together $15,000 for local appearances. From sold-out arenas to small venues where people came more out of nostalgia than genuine excitement. He'd become a ghost of himself, and the world watched from a distance, uncomfortable with seeing their hero so weakened. The financial devastation was crushing. Medical bills piled up. Work disappeared. The man who had once worn $300,000 in gold chains couldn't afford basic treatments. The emotional devastation cut even deeper. He'd built his entire identity on strength, on never backing down, on making others respect his power. Now he couldn't even stand confidently in front of a crowd. He questioned everything. Asked God why this was happening, why everything he'd built was being ripped away. The man who pitied fools now had to pity himself. But here's where the story takes a turn nobody talks about. Because cancer wasn't the only thing destroying Mr. T's career. It was just the thing that made Hollywood's real betrayal easier to hide. The real reason. Here's the dark truth they don't want you to know. Hollywood didn't just let Mr. T fade because of cancer. They were already pushing him out long before the diagnosis. The disease gave them cover, an excuse, a way to erase him without looking like the villains. Because Mr. T committed the ultimate Hollywood sin. He refused to play the game. Start with the A-Team said. Those 5 years of weekly television where he became America's favorite tough guy. Behind the scenes, tension simmered between Mr. T and George Peppard, the veteran actor who played the team's leader. Peppard had paid his dues in Hollywood for decades. Then suddenly, this newcomer bouncer was stealing all the attention, becoming the fan favorite, dominating the merchandising. Every lunchbox, every action figure, every piece of promotional material featured the mohawk and gold chains. The resentment created an atmosphere on set that was professional on camera, but ice cold behind it. They never openly fought, but everyone involved knew the truth. Peppard couldn't stand watching this street kid eclipse him. And here's what really happened. Network executives started realizing Mr. T was the show, not the ensemble, not the clever plots, not Peppard's leadership. Kids tuned in to see B.A. Baracus. Parents recognized the mohawk instantly. That shift in power created enemies Mr. T didn't even know he had. But the real problem went deeper than one jealous co-star. The action landscape was transforming in the mid-'80s, and Hollywood was making calculations about who fit the new mold. Schwarzenegger and Stallone represented something specific. European immigrants who'd muscled their way to American success. They could play working-class heroes, but also soldiers, cops, leaders. Mr. T was too specific, too ethnic, too identifiably black in ways that made white executives nervous about international markets. They never said it explicitly. They didn't have to. The roles just stopped coming. Or, when they did come, they were insults, criminals, thugs, comic relief, parodies of the character he'd created. Mr. T started saying no. He refused to play the poor black cop in scripts where he existed just to make the white hero look good. He turned down villains that reinforced every negative stereotype. In interviews, he was blunt about it. If the role has no soul, I won't take it. I don't need money that bad to make myself a joke. That defiance got him labeled difficult. Directors whispered warnings to studios. Mr. T has an attitude problem. The word spread like poison through an industry built on compliance. And here's the truly dark part. Mr. T was vocal about representation on sets. During the A-Team, he pushed for more black crew members, more diverse writing staff, more authentic portrayals. In 1983, that made him a troublemaker. The unofficial Hollywood blacklist has always existed. No documents prove it. No executives admit to it. But actors who speak up, who refuse to compromise, who demand dignity, they mysteriously stop getting calls. By the time cancer hit in 1995, Mr. T's career was already on life support. The disease didn't kill his career, it just made the death official. Gave Hollywood an easy explanation that didn't require examining their own complicity. The wrestling rejection told the same story. Roddy Piper and the professional wrestling community didn't hate Mr. T because he couldn't perform. They hated him because he represented something they couldn't control. A black man with mainstream fame stepping into their world without asking permission. When Piper said, "The whole wrestling world doesn't like him," he was really saying something else. He doesn't know his place. He won't stay in his lane. He thinks he belongs everywhere. That same energy followed Mr. T through Hollywood, an industry that wanted black action stars to be grateful for any opportunity. to play stereotypes without complaint, to smile while being underpaid and undervalued. Mr. T refused, and they made him pay for it. The Chainsaw Massacre scandal in '87 wasn't just environmental vandalism, it gave critics the ammunition they'd been waiting for. Proof that this street kid didn't deserve his success, that putting him on a pedestal was a mistake. Every controversy, every conflict, every moment of standing up for himself added weight until Hollywood simply stopped calling. And when cancer arrived, they could shrug and say, "What a tragedy, but that's life." Nobody had to admit they'd blacklisted a man for having dignity. The gold chains. When Hurricane Katrina devastated New Orleans in 2005, Mr. T made a decision that shocked everyone who knew him. He'd worn gold chains for decades, sometimes dozens of pounds worth, valued at $300,000. They were his trademark, his identity, the visual signature that made him recognizable from 100 yards away. He took them all off, every single one, and he publicly declared he'd never wear them again. His reasoning cut like a blade. When people lose everything, I can't keep draping myself in glittering things. It would be an insult to God and to those suffering. The gold that defined him for 25 years disappeared because his priorities had fundamentally shifted. But this wasn't just about jewelry. His faith now controlled every decision. Raised Christian, baptized at 4, reborn at 27, he'd always believed. But surviving cancer transformed belief into absolute conviction. He started seeing his illness not as punishment, but as a test. Like Job in the Bible, God was asking him to prove his faith meant more than his fame. When he finally beat the cancer in 2001, emerging cancer-free at 49, he emerged as someone completely different. In 2010, Hollywood remade the A-Team with a massive budget and star-studded cast. The studio offered him an honorable cameo role, a chance to pass the torch and collect an easy paycheck. He refused flat out. The new version was too violent, too sexual, too far removed from the family-friendly entertainment of the original. Back then, nobody died. It was all for families to watch together. Now they've turned it into blood and lust. I won't be part of that. Turning down that role meant turning down relevance, but he didn't hesitate. For the same reason, countless Hollywood offers got rejected. Violent villain roles, meaningless commercials, reality shows that would have exploited his name. He said no to everything that contradicted his values. Hollywood couldn't understand it. They'd seen stars cling desperately to fame, taking any role to stay visible. Here was Mr. T walking away from millions because the content didn't align with his beliefs. That confused them more than anything. An actor who valued something beyond the spotlight, the business. But there's another layer to why Hollywood really turned on Mr. T. And it's about something uglier than creative differences or moral stands: money. During the A-Team's run, Mr. T became the merchandising king. His face sold more lunchboxes, action figures, and cereals than anyone else on the show. Network executives watched the revenue pour in and made a realization that changed everything. Mr. T didn't own his own image. The contracts he'd signed as a nobody bouncer gave the network control over his likeness. They were making tens of millions off his face, his mohawk, his catchphrase. And he was getting his weekly salary with no back-end participation. When he tried to renegotiate, pushing for ownership rights or profit sharing, the network dug in. Legal battles erupted behind closed doors. Quiet at first, then increasingly hostile. Mr. T wanted what he'd earned. The network saw him as a product they'd created. Both sides refused to budge. George Peppard's resentment wasn't just about attention. It was about money. Peppard had back-end points in the show. Mr. T's merchandising success was making Peppard richer, while Mr. T fought for scraps. The veteran actor watched this newcomer generate millions in toy sales and cereal boxes, knowing that most of that money would never reach Mr. T's pockets. That dynamic poisoned everything. By the time the show ended in '87, bridges had been burned that could never be rebuilt. Network executives who'd once celebrated Mr. T now saw him as ungrateful, someone who didn't appreciate the opportunity they'd given him. In Hollywood math, standing up for yourself equals being difficult. The TNT series that followed was doomed from the start. Limited broadcast, small budget, minimal promotion. The network set him up to fail, and when the ratings couldn't compete, they had their proof. See, he can't carry a show anymore. Never mind that they'd sabotaged him deliberately. Every financial dispute, every contract negotiation, every moment where Mr. T demanded fair compensation added to the Whisper campaign. producers warned each other, "Don't work with him. He'll sue you. He thinks he deserves more than he's worth." The truth was simpler. Mr. T knew exactly what he was worth, and he refused to be exploited just because the industry expected black performers to be grateful for crumbs. That stubbornness, that refusal to compromise his value, killed his career as effectively as any scandal or blacklist. The blacklist. The Hollywood blacklist has always been unofficial. No documents, no smoking gun, just a series of closed doors and unreturned phone calls. But everyone in the industry knows it exists. Mr. T was added to that shadow list sometime in the late 80s. The exact moment doesn't matter. The reasons do. He spoke up about representation. He demanded fair compensation. He refused demeaning roles. He pushed back against typecasting. He had the audacity to believe his dignity mattered more than Hollywood's convenience. Every one of those actions was reasonable, justified, the bare minimum any performer should expect. And every one of them got him labeled a troublemaker. Compare his trajectory to other action stars from the same era. Schwarzenegger and Stallone transitioned to bigger budgets and leading roles. Chuck Norris maintained steady work through the 90s. Even smaller names found paths forward. Mr. T vanished. When cancer hit in '95, it provided perfect cover. "Oh, he's sick. That's why we can't cast him." Nobody had to admit they'd already frozen him out years earlier. The wrestling community's rejection followed the same pattern. Roddy Piper and others didn't reject Mr. T because he lacked talent. They rejected him because he represented something dangerous, a black man with mainstream power stepping into their world without permission. In an industry where knowing your place was everything, Mr. T refused to stay in his lane. He acted like he belonged everywhere, and that confidence, that refusal to be limited, made him a threat. The blacklist works through whispers. A producer mentions a name in a meeting, and someone else shakes their head slightly. "I heard he's difficult." That's all it takes. The room moves on to safer options. No confrontation, no explanation, just silence. Mr. T experienced that silence for years before cancer gave them an easier excuse. The comeback that wasn't. In 2014, WWE inducted Mr. T into the Hall of Fame. He stood on that stage and spent most of his acceptance speech praising his mother. He talked so long about her sacrifices, about how she raised 12 children alone after her husband abandoned them, that organizers had to cut him off. The audience didn't mind. They were seeing the real man behind the persona. That vulnerability meant more than any tough guy act ever could. He appeared on Dancing with the Stars, performing a waltz to Amazing Grace, dedicated it to God, donated his earnings to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Every choice had purpose beyond publicity. Reality show offers came regularly. Producers wanted to exploit his name, turn him into a spectacle. He turned down everyone that lacked dignity. The comeback everyone expected never happened. Not because he couldn't, because he wouldn't. Not on terms that required him to compromise what he'd learned through 6 years of fighting cancer. Today, at 73, Lawrence Terode lives quietly between Chicago and Albuquerque, far from Hollywood's chaos. He connects with fans through social media, but not with selfies and celebrity gossip. He shares Bible verses, prayers, encouragement. He sees himself as a modern preacher using the internet to spread faith rather than promote himself. When floods devastate communities, he's there carrying sandbags. When poor children in Chicago need shoes, he brings them personally. The gold chains are gone, the shouting has stopped, but something deeper remains. Mr. T's cultural impact refuses to die. B.A. Baracus still appears in parodies and references across television and film. Toy figures and posters sell to generations who grew up with him. Even young people who never witnessed his peak know him through internet memes and clips. "I Pity the Fool" has become eternal, repeated in contexts Mr. T never imagined. His mohawk remains one of the most recognizable hairstyles in history. The gold chains he abandoned in 2005 are still what people picture when they hear his name. But his real legacy isn't in movies or merchandise. It's in the choice he made to walk away when walking away meant everything. He could have clung to fame, taken any role offered, appeared on any reality show, done anything to stay relevant. Instead, he chose principles over paychecks, faith over fame, family over spotlights. That decision to value something beyond Hollywood's approval makes him more of a hero than any character he ever played. The man who once demanded respect through strength learned to earn it through humility. The warrior who collected gold chains as trophies learned that real treasure can't be worn around your neck. The action star who dominated the 80s learned that disappearing from screens doesn't mean disappearing from impact. Here's what they'll never tell you about why Mr. T really left Hollywood. He didn't leave. They pushed him out because he refused to be controlled, because he demanded fair treatment, because he spoke up about representation, because he wouldn't play stereotypes, because he valued his dignity more than their money. Cancer gave them a convenient excuse, a way to erase him without admitting their complicity. But Mr. T won anyway, not by conquering Hollywood or achieving ultimate vindication. He won by reclaiming his narrative, by building a life of purpose beyond the spotlight. At 73, he doesn't need Hollywood anymore. The life he's living, quiet, faithful, purposeful, is light enough. Mr. T's story proves that real strength isn't about never falling. It's about what you do after life knocks you down. And sometimes the greatest victory is choosing to walk away from a fight that was rigged from the start. Hollywood canceled Mr. T, but they couldn't destroy what he built. They couldn't erase the impact. They couldn't silence the message that a black man from Chicago's worst neighborhood could become a cultural icon through strength and dignity. That refusing to compromise yourself isn't failure, it's the ultimate success. The dark truth behind his disappearance isn't that he faded. It's that they tried to erase him, and he survived anyway. On his own terms, with his faith intact, with his dignity preserved. That's the legacy they can never cancel.